All right, so let's get started. I am going to be presenting the final campaign report, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that we have studied this semester, and the things that I've learned in this course. And I will have to say that I've learned a lot, so I'm really excited to show and kind of compile all of my studies and different projects that I have completed, I guess, this semester, this course. All right, just to get started, obviously I know as you're watching this, you're familiar with the studies and projects that we've completed, but I just kind of want to show on my end the things that I'm going to talk about just for organization purposes. So the first part of it, I'm going to talk about my reflection papers. It's going to discuss my personal experiences, talking about college, my university experience with attitudes, values, and needs, and kind of explain what those things are to show my knowledge on that. And then I'm going to integrate the background research slideshow about Kent State University's program, the interview results that I did for the Think Aloud experiment or study, I should say, and then the survey results for the experiment that I did, looking at the social media post from Kent State University. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to talk about Kent State's communication program that I did some research on. And the students have two options when they are studying communications at Kent State. They can either do an applied communication track or they can just do a communication studies general track. According to the Kent State's School of Communications website, they are pretty high ranked, but when you look at them nationally, there's other universities that would have a better program than Kent State. So, there, like I said, there's other universities that are competitive compared to Kent State University's program, but according to their website, they are highly top ranked by these websites here. Now, nowadays in modern ways of using persuasion tactics, social media is used everywhere for anything, for marketing, things along those lines. So Kent State University, this is from one of their Facebook posts. They use this post as a persuasion tactic of an alumni who got one of the highest bar scores, and her background in communications, they're highlighting that as a way of how she became successful and how she was able to achieve this high bar score going into law program. It also kind of gives the impression that the communication program at Kent State was making her successful and making her prepared for her path. So this persuasion tactic that they're using is showing that she is confident, that she has the knowledge, she has the cognitive ability because of Kent State's program. So that's kind of interesting that they're using this as a tactic in a sense, to know that she has the knowledge and success because of her high achievements, because of Kent State's program, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I did this as one of my experiments to see what people thought in terms of this social media post. So this was kind of interesting, and that they were using this as a persuasion tactic. Okay, so the next social media post that I found on Kent State's Communication Studies social media handle, I think this comes from Facebook, I believe. Yeah, it does. So essentially, associate professor from Kent State University did a podcast with Dr. Phil. And they put this on their social media platform to kind of highlight and make the program stand out, right? Now, the persuasion tactic that's being used here is cognitive and authority. Dr. Phil is very well known. He has his own TV show, he has books he's written, he is very famous. Having a famous figure like Dr. Phil to meet with a Kent State professor is really boosting the authority, I guess, in the sense of this idea of what they're trying to persuade to the audience. So having somebody that is well known nationally or internationally, I should say, he's a very famous figure in television. It talks about the significance of pronouns in their podcast, and his reputation and his authority of his program really highlights and catapults Kent State's program, which it's pretty cool that they did a podcast on this, and it really just the attention that it brings to Kent State University in using this persuasion tactic. Okay, the next social media post, this comes from Instagram. And what I really like about this post is that it really fits the idea and theme of, and the tone of really what this is trying to highlight, this persuasion tactic. It is a social media post that is using dark color schemes. It has the opposing color choices of the fonts and the background to really highlight the idea of depression being this silent epidemic. So it grabs the attention of the audience by using the font, the capitalization, its color choices to kind of point out the idea that depression is a silent epidemic and it's something that needs to be addressed, and it's a severe issue in our society. So this persuasion tactic that I believe it's using is effective and valence persuasion tactic, which it's really hitting the emotions of a person, because the person that, or the viewer seeing this post, might be someone that has ties to depression, whether that's a family member or a friend or even themselves personally. That, so mental health for me is impacted my life. I know people who have depression, and it is something that people struggle with. And to me, seeing this post, it really hits home to me, and to say that I agree that this is a social epidemic, and this is a silent epidemic that needs addressed, and more people need to bring attention and awareness to this, because this is an issue. So I would say that this post personally has stuck out to me, and I agree with it. And this is something that I have shown my friends when I did the different studies and stuff in this course. And we've had conversations about how this has impacted us in our lives. So it brings a conversation because it's hitting those emotions. And this idea of just depression is something that is controversial in society. It's something that mental health is, it's increasing, and more people are struggling with mental health. And it brings that discussion to bring awareness of depression and mental health in general. So Kent State has gotten a lot of different news coverages nationally, and one of the coverages that I want to discuss that I'll share in this, there's other ones I've used in my previous project, but this one here I thought was really interesting. A former Kent State student named Megan Cash, she majored in visual communication design, and on her free time, she does a lot of designs, holiday cards, all kinds of different things that she uploads on minted.com. And her Christmas card was the template that was chosen by Jason Kelce. And I feel like everybody knows the Kelce family at this point because of Taylor Swift and just the media coverage that this family has been getting. So this really helped her and catapult her online business. And it was really cool that this student came from Kent State, and it not only helped her business, but it brought attention to Kent State's program to say, wow, one of the Kelce brothers bought something associated with a Kent State student. So I thought that was really interesting and cool to see that posted. Now, I said a little bit earlier that Kent State, there are other programs that are highly ranked better than their program, but there are some strengths that come with Kent State's communication program. So one of them is alumni from Kent State's communication studies. They're pursuing careers by working for the Cleveland Cavaliers, New York Times, NASA, Disney World, Netflix, Fox News, and Washington, D.C., which is really amazing that we're having alumni from this communication program be in these competitive and highly ranked companies in the United States. And also, Kent State's communication program is currently ranked 105 in the U.S. There, like I said, there's other programs that are ranked higher than that, but you have to think how many communication programs there are in the United States. It's a really big number, so it's pretty cool to see that they're even remotely close to the top 100, so that is an accomplishment in itself. Okay, first I'm going to talk about the attitudes related to the idea of college. So for me, I have a positive attitude / outlook on attending college, and this has been something that has impacted me to enroll in this and have this behavior of enrolling and pursuing college. Not everybody has a positive outlook or attitude towards college. Some people just feel like it's too expensive, that they are done with high school, they don't want to deal with it, it's just they want to just go into the workforce, and that's completely fine. But for me personally, I felt like college was something that I needed in order to become successful. I needed it to become a Spanish teacher. I needed the expertise, the experience, the knowledge, the connections professionally in order to pursue my career. So for me personally, I have this positive outlook and attitude towards it, and it also impacted my decision to enroll in a master's in communication. I feel that I have this strong feeling of, college is important, education is important, and it's a positive outlook for me that when this opportunity of studying communication came about, I definitely wanted to pursue it because of my positive outlook on it. So continuing on from the idea of college, my cultural values of my decisions to attend college made me enroll into a master's in communication. I value education. I value the importance of getting higher on the pay scale. And when this opportunity came, presented itself to me to study communications, I definitely took it because for me, I value education and I value always learning. Even though I'm a teacher, I'm always a student. I'm always learning something, and just the value that school has, that drive me to make that decision to attend college and to go back for my master's in communications. Okay, next talking about the needs. There is a hierarchy that is used for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and there is an arrangement of once you meet the more necessities like clothes, food, things along those lines, you can move up the pyramid, which comes to the higher needs, and they become more creative and intellectual for an individual. So for me, college has been that thing that has fulfilled those higher needs for me. It has given me the need for love and belonging and finding a place, and college has been that aid for me to find out who I am as a person, as an individual. Okay, moving on to one of the experiments or studies that we did this semester, or this course I should say. We did a think aloud with some participants, and these are kind of the things that I've learned through this. So during the interviews, I found that valence played an integral part in the opinions, the thoughts, and emotions of social media posts with participants. And I'll show some examples of what that looks like. So one of the studies that we talked about this is an example from Coke versus Pepsi. Somebody that is asked Coke versus Pepsi, they're going to give a system one response, right? Coke, for sure, because they have an emotional connection to that. They're not going to think there logically and say, well, I like what Coke stands for, their brand, their colors that they use on the bottle, their fonts. I like red better than blue. I like the taste of Coke better. They're not going to sit there and think about that. I mean, personally, I'm not. So it's going to be more of an emotional response. Maybe the last time they had a Pepsi, it was flat and it just didn't taste good, so they're going to go with Coke. So essentially, these kind of gave the system one answers, and they're more like emotional ties to the decision making. And moving on to the next slide here. So there are a couple of posts that I showed to the participants, and they just gave me their thoughts of whatever they were thinking right on the spot, rather than just thinking there and using system 2 processing. They just said, I like this, I don't like this, and I said, give me some information. Why don't you like this? So I used a social media post by Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil is a famous figure. People have opinions, whether that's positive, neutral, or negative opinions about him, his psychological practices, and I wanted to see what these people and the participants thought of the interviews that I did. Were they going to give me positive or negative valence with this topic? Okay, so I showed the participants the social media posts about the Kent State professor discussing the use of pronouns in today's society along with Dr. Phil, and discuss a little bit about like the podcast and things that they conducted together. So these are just some of the responses that I got from each participant. As you could tell, each participant has their own political stances versus emotional stances, opinions, beliefs, attitudes, all of those things. So participant 1 said, I understand as a teacher calling students by correct pronouns, but it's nonsense and a sign of mental health. God created you in your image. God makes no mistakes and people are confused. So obviously this person that I interviewed has a very negative attitude towards using pronouns, that they don't really believe in it, but they do it as a sign of respect. Participant 2 says people should be addressed as they wish, everyone deserves respect. So this person has a more open idea of the use of pronouns, and they seem very more accepting to this idea. Participant 3 says, it's okay. Pronouns have become too extra. I might mess up, and they should not get mad at me if I do. I will try to use the pronouns that someone wants me to address them. So this person has a very, I feel like neutral response on this idea that they'll do it in the sense of respect, but they're not have a strong emotional attachment to the idea of using pronouns. So it's very interesting to see that these responses, these think alouds, really tie into the emotional experiences and the emotions of the system 1 processing when it comes to decision making. So in the Think-A-Lot, I also asked the participants to share their opinions on Dr. Phil and his psychological practices and tactics that he uses, whether it's on his TV show, in his book, in social media, etc. So participant 1 says, I like Dr. Phil a lot. He helps set people straight and turns kids' lives around. He does more good than bad. He brings attention to mental health. I agree with mostly what he says. So this person has a very, I would say, a more positive outlook and opinion attitude towards Dr. Phil. Participant 2 said, Dr. Phil interviewed people who I knew during a tragedy in their life. However, I don't know much about him to have an opinion. I would say I have neutral feelings about him. So this person, the only thing they really know about them is Dr. Phil had some type of tie with somebody that they knew that had a tragedy in their life, and they just didn't really know much about him to have or form an opinion. Participant 3 says, I like Dr. Phil, but I think he is on TV to solve problems, but to get the gossip. Sorry, my image is cutting out the words there. So she's just kind of thinking that it's maybe more of a negative feeling that, he's helping people, but it's more about the gossip. It's more about the reality TV of things. Okay, moving on towards the end of my slideshow, social media post experiment, where I showed a social media post to half of my participants and the other half did not see it. And we're going to kind of compare the answers based on the questions to see if that post gave some type of persuasion towards those participants in their answers or if it did not. So I thought this was actually one of the most interesting things that we've done this semester. So this is the post I showed, and I actually presented this in the beginning of the slideshow. So group 1, these participants saw, I know it says the right side of the slideshow, I meant the left side, sorry. Participants were asked certain questions after reading this post, and for me, I really believed that their answers would be a little more skewed or persuaded towards the post in a positive way, but I will show my results here in a second. In group 2 of the participants, they were not shown the post. They were just kind of answering the questions blindly without any type of persuasion in front of them. So the results I'm going to show you, the first block of the questions was related to the average scores of group 1's, and the second block of questions is related to the average score of group 2's responses. So here's the chart that we got here. By comparing these means of the two groups in the survey questions, it showed that group 2, the ones who did not view the social media post, they had a higher mean in general, or there was a higher mean when you look at the differences. So on this chart here, group 1's mean had a 4.44, 4.11, etc. This is the answers of strongly agree, somewhat agree, neutral, somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. And the higher you are is more of a strongly agree stance on things. We could see that there is a change in the answers, and the higher averages come from group 2's responses, which was so interesting to see. I thought this would be used as a great persuasion tactic that we talked about earlier, how this student became successful because that they're highlighting because of Kent State's communication program. However, I found at this experiment that this social media post actually created what we know as a boomerang effect, where the opposite that we thought would happen or what we wanted as a consequence happened. So we found that this advertisement was actually unsuccessful. Now, there might be a lot of different reasons to that and explanations, but I'm going to kind of go through and show just very quickly some of the questions that I asked. I don't want to waste time, but a communication degree is relevant and beneficial to a student entering the law program. This is one of the questions I've asked. Another one is, a degree in communication will provide the skills and knowledge to make someone successful in a career that they decide to pursue. So these questions kind of tie in to the idea of the post. And I thought that this post would really convince the viewers or the test takers, interviewees, that, oh wow, the Kent State has a great program. So let's kind of look at what happened here. I'm just going to skip, and I will attach my slideshow in case you want to see it. I just don't want to waste more recording time or bore you with my my insight on those things. But the feedback that I got after the survey, I know that this wasn't actually in my studies, but I asked the participants who took it, because obviously I know who the participants are, their friends, family, that I sent this form to. And some of the participants told me, they said, well, I didn't really know much about Kent State's program to even have a decision or an opinion. So I saw this post and I'm like, okay, I don't really know much about it. I'm just going to answer whatever. Some of them said that they did not have the connections to support their program. I know, for example, Youngstown State, one of the reasons that I went there is because my parents went to Youngstown State. It's here in Youngstown area. I live local. I know they had a great education program. So I know about it. I have connections to that. So the participants maybe didn't have connections to the program or Kent State. They're like, okay, I don't know much about it. I can't really answer this. Another thing is, to persuade the audience, the tactics need to address attitudes and values and have those connections for an individual. Maybe the person doesn't have a positive attitude towards it, and that's why they responded with, I guess, with a lower average, I should say. Or they don't value education like the way that group 1 values. So it really just depends, or group 2 values. It really just depends on, I guess, the participants. There's other reasons I can explain that, but I thought that was quite interesting. So in the survey results, like I said, there was evidence that the social media post created this boomerang effect. And that being said, what improvements can we make with this experiment? Maybe the more participants we have, it can give us a more clear average. So when you look at statistics, the more people you have, the closer you are to your mean. So that can be something that we can improve on. If I were to do this experiment again, maybe ask more than, I think I had 18 or 19 participants. Maybe I would take more time to do this and have 100 participants to get more of a clear answer. But from what I've seen, it did cause this boomerang effect. So here are some different tactics and things based on my findings with this social media post. So we can use social proof as a form of a persuasion tactic, that when you have social proof that someone they know that completed this program, rather just a random person, there's more, I guess, opportunity for persuasion, right? If, I don't know, Taylor Swift did this program, you'd probably get more people to enroll in this program or to support Kent State's program because of her reputation and her authority in society. But just having a random person, I mean, you don't know if this person's real. Like, we're hoping that it's real. You know, like, you don't know this person, so viewers might just be like, okay, she's just a random everyday person. Again, like I said, like authority, that could be used as a persuasion tactic, where someone who, I guess, has a reputation or ties with Kent State can be used as a persuasion tactic. Like, I don't know, like Dr. Phil, that post there, I feel like if I did a study on that, you would get a more clear answer on it being a persuasion tactic because of his authority. Also, repetition. I will say personally, before I studied Kent State's program, I don't know anything about Kent State's communication program. I'm in the same boat as everybody else. But the more that we advertise and highlight the program, the more they post, the more they put it on the news or social media, and more people that see it, repetition can cause the persuasion tactic to go in a positive way. Okay, these are the references I use. Most of them come from my earlier projects in this course, and I will keep them here. I will also be attaching the full slideshow if you want to go through and just kind of look through things. I apologize for talking so long. I have a lot to say. In all honesty, I'm genuinely serious that I have learned so much in this class. And even for today, like I went to go look at a car and I'm like, I know the persuasion tactics they're going to use on me. So I just feel like I have a one-up on because I know the psychological stuff and the persuasion tactics people are going to use. And even when I see advertisements, I'm like, oh, we learned about this in our class. I read this in one of our readings. So I thought this class really taught me a lot in communications, and I think this was a really great course. And I apologize that this is like a 30-minute video, but I love this kind of stuff, and I can't wait for the next course that I'm going to take. And yeah, thank you so much if you watched it to the end. Like I said, I'm sorry that it's so long, but I thought this was really great, and that is all for my presentation. Thank you so much.